Harrison barely slept that night. The storm had passed sometime before dawn, but the Whitmore estate still felt heavy with the kind of silence that settled over places where too many secrets had lived too long. At 6:30 in the morning, he walked through the east hallway carrying a cup of black coffee, while pale sunlight filtered through tall windows overlooking the gardens. The mansion looked beautiful from a distance. White stone walls, perfect hedges, expensive sculptures imported from Europe decades earlier. But inside, the atmosphere felt strained, like every room was holding its breath. As Harrison passed the library, he noticed James standing beside a silver serving cart, carefully organizing envelopes into neat stacks. The old butler looked startled the moment he saw Harrison. "Morning," Harrison said calmly. James nodded too quickly. One envelope slipped from his hands before he hurried to place it back under the others. Harrison caught the corner of Eleanor's name printed across the front before James pushed the entire stack away. "Mrs. Whitmore still asleep?" Harrison asked. "Miss Isabel asked that nobody disturb her this morning," James replied quietly. "Not Mrs. Whitmore asked. Isabel asked." Harrison noticed that detail immediately. Later that afternoon, he found David alone on the rear terrace overlooking the lake behind the estate. A half-finished glass of bourbon rested beside him even though it was barely noon. David looked exhausted up close, older than 43. "You ever feel like this house changes people?" David asked without looking at him. Harrison leaned against the railing. "Sometimes houses do not change people," he said. "Sometimes they reveal who they already were." David gave a tired smile that disappeared almost instantly. Before he could answer, Isabel stepped outside wearing dark sunglasses and a long cream coat despite the warm weather. "Thomas will be here tomorrow," she said smoothly. "We need everybody available after dinner." David stiffened slightly. "For what?" he asked. "Estate planning," Isabel replied. "Your mother wants to simplify things while she still can." While she still can. Harrison watched David lower his eyes again like a man too exhausted to fight another invisible battle. Isabel rested her hand lightly on his shoulder before returning inside without another word. Harrison noticed something else then. Every conversation inside the Whitmore estate ended the moment Isabel entered the room. That evening, Ethan finally approached Harrison near the staircase after dinner while thunder clouds gathered again outside the windows. His voice stayed low enough to avoid attention. "Did you notice the empty chair last night?" Ethan asked. Harrison nodded once. Ethan glanced toward the dining room, where Isabel laughed softly beside Victoria beneath the chandelier light. "That used to be my Aunt Caroline's seat," he whispered. "Nobody has seen her in almost 8 months." The next evening, the Whitmore estate felt colder despite the fire burning inside the dining room fireplace. Rain clouds hung low over the property again, turning the massive windows into dark mirrors reflecting chandelier light across polished floors. Harrison arrived downstairs early and found Eleanor alone near the piano room, staring toward the gardens without moving. She looked smaller somehow, fragile beneath the oversized pastel cardigan draped around her shoulders. "You should eat something before everyone arrives," Harrison said gently. Eleanor smiled faintly, but did not turn around. "Do you know what the saddest part of getting older is?" she asked quietly. Harrison waited. "Realizing your own family has conversations about your future while pretending you are not in the room." Before he could answer, Isabel appeared from the hallway carrying a leather folder against her chest. "Thomas is here," she said smoothly. "We are ready in the study." Eleanor immediately lowered her eyes like a child being corrected in school. Harrison noticed it again. Isabel never raised her voice. She never needed to. An hour later, dinner began with the same careful performance as the night before. Crystal glasses, expensive silverware, soft music drifting through hidden speakers. Victoria spoke endlessly about upcoming charity donors while David remained distant, barely listening. Ethan arrived late and sat quietly near the end of the table beneath the staircase shadows. Thomas Whitmore entered midway through dinner carrying several legal folders beneath his arm. The family attorney looked exactly the way Harrison remembered him from years ago. Gray suit, thin glasses, calm expression hiding constant calculation behind his eyes. "Apologies for interrupting dinner," Thomas said politely. "Mrs. Whitmore requested we finalize a few matters tonight." Eleanor tightened her grip around her wine glass. Harrison saw her hand tremble slightly. Isabel noticed too. "It is only paperwork," she said softly. placing a reassuring hand over Eleanor's wrist. "We are simplifying responsibilities so you can finally rest." Simplifying responsibilities. Harrison watched the words settle heavily across the room. David looked uncomfortable, but said nothing. Victoria nodded approvingly as though the entire discussion had already been decided weeks earlier. Ethan quietly stopped eating altogether. After dinner, Harrison passed the study on his way upstairs and noticed the door left slightly open. Inside, Thomas spread documents across Eleanor's desk, while Isabel stood beside him reviewing pages carefully. "If her condition continues declining, the transition will be much smoother this way," Thomas said in a low voice. Harrison froze instantly. Isabel lowered her voice further, but he still caught part of her response. "David cannot handle the estate alone. We need control before things become messy." Then Eleanor spoke so quietly Harrison almost missed it entirely. "What happens if Ethan finds out?" Isabel smiled faintly before answering. "By the time Ethan understands anything, it will already belong to us." Harrison stared at David's signature for a long moment, while rain continued falling against the distant windows above them. The paper trembled slightly in Ethan's hands as though even he could not fully believe what they had discovered. "My father signed this?" Ethan asked quietly. James lowered his eyes toward the floor. "Mr. David has been signing documents Isabel places in front of him for over a year now." Harrison closed the file slowly. Something about the signature felt wrong. Not fake. Worse, exhausted. The kind of signature written by someone too emotionally drained to ask questions anymore. "He knows more than he admits," Ethan whispered. "Or maybe less," Harrison replied carefully. Upstairs, the grandfather clock echoed through the estate, reminding them how late it had become. James urged them to leave before anyone noticed the hidden records room open. Harrison carried copies of several documents back to his bedroom, while his thoughts grew heavier with every passing minute. Caroline disappeared, Eleanor being declared mentally unstable. Estate control quietly shifting toward Isabel. And somehow David sat trapped in the center of all of it, like a man slowly drowning without realizing how deep the water had become. The following morning, tension spread through the mansion almost immediately. Harrison noticed staff members whispering nervously near the kitchen entrance, while Victoria paced through the main hallway, speaking sharply into her phone about attorneys and board meetings. By lunchtime, Isabel had already reorganized the entire household schedule. Eleanor remained confined mostly to her upstairs sitting room to rest. Ethan was suddenly excluded from a family financial meeting. Even David looked more withdrawn than usual, avoiding eye contact during lunch while absently stirring soup he never touched. Harrison understood then that Isabel had sensed movement inside the house. She might not know exactly what they discovered, but she knew something had changed. That evening, another formal dinner unfolded beneath the chandelier light. Crystal glasses shimmered across the long oak table, while thunder rolled faintly outside beyond the dark windows. Nobody seemed comfortable anymore. Eleanor barely spoke. Ethan remained silent. David looked pale and distracted. Isabel, however, appeared perfectly composed. Halfway through dinner, she gently set down her wine glass and smiled toward Harrison. "I hope the estate has been welcoming," she said softly. Harrison met her gaze calmly. "Old houses usually tell interesting stories." Isabel smiled faintly. "Only dangerous ones survive this long." The room fell quiet again. Victoria immediately changed the subject, but Harrison noticed David staring nervously between them. Isabel continued eating as though nothing unusual had happened. Then Thomas entered unexpectedly, carrying another leather folder beneath his arm. "I apologize for interrupting," he said politely, "but there are a few urgent documents requiring signatures tonight." Eleanor visibly stiffened. David rubbed his forehead in frustration. Ethan quietly pushed his chair back from the table. Harrison watched Thomas lay the folder beside Isabel instead of Eleanor. That detail alone told him everything. Isabel opened the folder calmly and slid one document toward David. "It is only temporary authorization," she said reassuringly, "just in case your mother's condition declines further." David stared at the paper without touching it. For the first time since Harrison arrived at the estate, somebody finally said what everyone else had been too afraid to admit. "My condition is fine," Eleanor whispered from the far end of the table. Every head slowly turned toward her. Eleanor's voice was quiet, but the effect was immediate. Even the soft jazz playing through the ceiling speakers seemed to disappear beneath the silence spreading across the dining room. David slowly looked up from the papers in front of him, while Victoria stiffened beside Isabel. Thomas removed his glasses carefully, as though buying himself time to think. Isabel, however, remained perfectly composed. "Nobody said your condition was poor," she replied gently. "We are simply preparing for the future." Eleanor looked toward the rain-covered windows instead of answering. Harrison noticed how tired she seemed, not physically, but emotionally exhausted in the way people become after years of losing arguments they never wanted to have. "The future," Eleanor repeated softly. "Interesting how everyone keeps discussing mine without asking me what I want." David finally pushed the documents away from him. "Mother, nobody is trying to hurt you," he said, though even he sounded uncertain. Ethan leaned forward immediately. "Then why are there competency evaluations hidden inside locked files?" The entire room froze. Harrison watched Isabel's expression carefully. For the first time, something cold flickered behind her calm smile. "Excuse me," Victoria snapped sharply. Ethan did not back down. "I found the records downstairs," he continued. "The evaluations, the trust amendments, the transfer authorizations." Thomas stood abruptly. "Those are confidential legal materials. Maybe they should not have been hidden behind a locked service hallway then," Ethan replied. Harrison could feel tension tightening across the table like wire ready to snap. David looked back and forth between them, clearly overwhelmed. "What records?" he asked quietly. Isabel answered before anyone else could speak. "Ethan has been going through private family documents and misunderstanding routine estate planning." "Routine?" Ethan stared at her in disbelief. "You are trying to convince everyone Grandma is mentally unstable." "Enough," Victoria interrupted coldly. "This family has protected Eleanor for years while you stand around acting like a suspicious child." Eleanor lowered her eyes again. Harrison realized then that this was how Isabel maintained control. Not through screaming or threats, through exhaustion. Every confrontation became so emotionally draining that eventually people stopped resisting altogether. David rubbed his face slowly with both hands. "I cannot do this tonight," he muttered. Then something unexpected happened. James entered the dining room carrying a small silver tray, but instead of moving toward the kitchen, he stopped beside Harrison. Quietly, without attracting attention from the others, he slipped a folded note onto the table near Harrison's hand. Harrison waited several seconds before opening it beneath the edge of the tablecloth. The handwriting was rushed and uneven. "Meet me in the lower archive room at midnight. Bring Ethan. You were right about Caroline." Harrison looked up immediately toward James, but the old butler avoided eye contact and continued serving wine as though nothing had happened. Across the table, Isabel suddenly turned her head toward Harrison. Her expression remained calm, elegant, almost warm. But Harrison understood the message hidden behind her eyes now. She knew the walls inside the Whitmore estate were beginning to crack, and she was preparing to seal them before the truth escaped. At exactly midnight, Harrison and Ethan slipped quietly through the east hallway, while most of the Whitmore estate remained dark. Only a few lamps near the staircase still glowed softly beneath the chandeliers, casting long shadows across the marble floors. Rain continued falling outside, steady and cold against the towering windows. Harrison noticed Ethan checking behind them every few seconds, as though he expected someone to appear from the darkness. By the time they reached the hidden archive room, James was already waiting beside the open door. He looked more nervous than before. "We do not have much time," he whispered. "Thomas and Isabel are meeting downstairs in the study tonight." Harrison frowned immediately. "At midnight." James nodded. "Whenever they discuss important matters, they do it after everyone else goes to sleep." Ethan closed the archive room door carefully behind them. "What did you mean about Caroline?" James hesitated for several seconds before finally walking toward one of the older filing cabinets near the back wall. His hands trembled slightly as he unlocked the drawer. "Miss Caroline was the first person who realized money was disappearing from the family accounts," he said quietly. She confronted Isabel privately. 2 days later, Mr. David announced she needed time away from the family. James removed a thick manila folder and handed it to Harrison, but she never left willingly. Harrison opened the file slowly. Inside were printed emails, legal notices, and copies of financial transfers connected to an assisted living property in Arizona. Ethan stared at the documents in confusion. What is this? Harrison kept reading silently until one line made his stomach tighten. Temporary guardianship authorization. Caroline Whitmore. Approved by Thomas Whitmore. They declared her emotionally unstable, Harrison said quietly. Ethan stepped backward in disbelief. You were saying they forced her out? James lowered his head. Miss Caroline threatened to involve outside attorneys. After that, nobody in the family was allowed to contact her directly anymore. Ethan sat down heavily against one of the storage boxes, stunned into silence. Harrison continued searching through the folder until another item caught his attention. An audio recorder sealed inside a small evidence bag. James noticed immediately. That recording was made accidentally during an argument inside the study almost a year ago, he explained. I kept it because I thought someday somebody might need proof. Harrison pressed the playback button carefully. Static crackled through the tiny speaker before voices slowly became clear. Thomas spoke first. If Eleanor refuses to cooperate, the competency petition will move forward anyway. Then Isabel's voice answered calmly, almost casually. Once David signs everything, the estate belongs to us legally. Eleanor will not have the strength to fight by then. Harrison felt Ethan freeze beside him. But then another voice entered the recording unexpectedly. David. Exhausted. Angry. This was supposed to protect the family, he said. Not destroy it. Silence filled the archive room after the recording ended. Rain hammered harder against the mansion outside, while somewhere upstairs, footsteps suddenly echoed faintly across the ceiling above them. The footsteps above the archive room stopped as suddenly as they had started. Harrison motioned for silence while the three of them listened carefully beneath the low hum of rain surrounding the estate. After several tense seconds, the sound faded toward the west hallway upstairs. Ethan finally exhaled slowly. Somebody knows we are down here, he whispered. James looked visibly shaken. Then we cannot wait any longer. Harrison stared at the audio recorder still resting in his hand. David's voice echoed inside his mind again. This was supposed to protect the family, not destroy it. For the first time since arriving at the Whitmore estate, Harrison realized David might not be the architect of the betrayal after all. He might simply be another person trapped inside it. Early the next morning, the atmosphere inside the mansion shifted completely. Staff members avoided eye contact. Victoria remained locked inside private phone calls. Thomas arrived before breakfast carrying additional legal files, while Isabel moved calmly through the house, as though she were already in control of everything. Harrison noticed Eleanor sitting alone near the fireplace shortly after sunrise, wrapped in a pale gray blanket, while staring at old family photographs spread across the coffee table. Did you ever trust Isabel? Harrison asked quietly after sitting beside her. Eleanor remained silent for several moments. At first, she admitted softly. She made David happy after his father died. This house was falling apart emotionally back then. She picked up an old photograph showing Caroline standing beside David years earlier beneath the same chandelier that now hung over endless tense dinners. Caroline saw through people too quickly. That was always her problem. Harrison studied Eleanor carefully. You know what Isabel has been doing. Eleanor closed her eyes briefly. I knew pieces of it. Not all of it. Her voice trembled slightly. When you spend years grieving, you stop fighting small compromises because you tell yourself keeping the family together matters more. Harrison understood then how Isabel succeeded. She never took control all at once. She waited patiently while exhausted people surrendered one decision at a time. That evening, another storm rolled across the estate just before dinner. Thunder shook the tall windows while lightning flashed faintly across the distant hills beyond the property. Everyone gathered again beneath the chandelier inside the massive dining room, but tonight felt different. The tension no longer hid beneath polite conversation. It sat openly at the table beside them. Thomas arranged legal documents near David's plate while Isabel calmly poured wine into crystal glasses. Victoria spoke sharply about responsibility and family legacy. Ethan barely touched his food. Harrison noticed James standing unusually close to the doorway as though preparing for something. Then Eleanor slowly placed her napkin onto the table. No more documents tonight, she said quietly. Isabel looked toward her with controlled patience. Eleanor, we are only trying to help you. Eleanor finally lifted her eyes fully for the first time in days. No, she replied softly. You are trying to replace me before I am even gone. Silence crashed across the room. David looked stunned. Thomas immediately adjusted his glasses nervously. But Isabel remained perfectly calm until Harrison reached into his jacket and placed the small audio recorder directly onto the center of the oak table.